Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the show. I see we already have our first co host in the chat. Hey there, Druden. For a first level character, I don't know. I don't know if claiming this chat in the name of Tiamat's a good idea, considering what we're going to talk about this week. Well, we're going to have some fun, but. Um, Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone here. Broadcast 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the channel RPG with DBJ and look through it through the interwebs. This week, we're going to discuss the OSR versus modern Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to use 5th edition as its competitor, but we're also going to include things such as Level Up Advanced 5th Edition, the Black Flag Project, and others that are coming along, and individuals in the greater tabletop role playing game community, and why the OSR now is getting so much attention, and some of the to let us navigate some of the unintended consequences that have led from the beginnings of Dungeons and Dragons all the way up to a modern era. I believe we see in some forums and some kinds of social medias that I feel like there's some ways we can have more of a collective dissertation. Emotion dopamine hits are real easy. I hate, I love, I despise, I'm in battle, but I think it's a little deeper than that, and I think we could go a little bit deeper. We don't have to get very philosophical about it, but I think there are some issues. And today, I thought we would talk about gold, experience points, and encumbrance, and such simple things in the beginnings, the beginning era of the red boxes, which is when I started back in '78 ish. Uh, s- I believe is when I first got my red box. I don't have it any longer, and began playing BX, Basic Expert, and moving on forward. And some of the iterative changes that have happened through Dungeons and Dragons, and to come through it from an old grognard's point of view without sticking my flag into a hill and saying I'm going to die on it. So, hey Z, yeah, morning all. Actually, up this time, okay. And if I could fight a bullrog at level 1 and survive, we can handle Tiamat. You think so? I, okay, a couple of good rolls, a couple of great saving throws, and to be ignored by powerful entities, I think that's a good thing. And we're going to get into being ignored by powerful entities and what that actually means. So, do me the honor of allowing me to set up the my premise first, the debate, as it were. Uh, and then as we move on in the channel, you guys can rip me a new one when it comes to it. All right. So the OSR versus 5th edition. Now, gold, experience points, and encumbrance, to me, in the OSR regime, whether it's good or bad, I'm going to use the word vectors of challenge quite a bit. And it's my definition of the things that players can come across or delve in, or resources, or a game mechanism that was used so that player characters had more than one thing to worry about, unlike modern day Dungeons and Dragons. So, what do I mean by that? So, we all know that classically hit points are the way to measure. It's the barometer for measuring success and failure. The more hit points you have left, the more you can go on. Of course, um, as hit points rise and fall, there are usually no other mechanical deficits to losing or gaining hit points. It's literally a barometer. You could even call it a timer as your hit points tick off how far you can move along to be effective in the adventure. And if you lose all of them over time from the OSR, more and more things were put in place to allow those hit points to continue being in the positive. More healing, um, greater numbers being healed when you rest, instead of healing one hit point a day, then it became 1 hit point an hour, maybe, and then and so on. And now it's like, oh, 8 hour, get 8 hours rest, you're fully healed. There are no long term effects. So hit points became the and the literally by the name hit points, it became the thing that we measured success and failure. If I still have hit points, I can still move. If I'm still effective, that means we are heading towards a successful path in terms of adventuring, gaining more treasure, more power, and things like that. Yeah, 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 yeah. I see you there, Jay. J Dub. Yeah. Mm. There's some other things we're gonna go into a little bit of the bankruptcy issue and TSR and selling it off and the lawsuits, not lawsuits today, but lawsuits back in the 90s. Yeah, we're gonna get to that later on. But today I'm gonna hyper focus on gold, experience points, and encumbrance. All right, so I no matter what role playing game you decide to play, other rules, we know that Dungeons and Dragons is built on very old rules. Armor class and hit points and alignment to me seem to be the top three that with encumbrance and you'll see what I'm going to talk about, um, are the one of the are usually the first things that tend to get dropped very easily and replaced with something else because we all go, my mind just can't wrap around this. It's not a very good barometer for what I'm looking for. I want to change it. For example, most people change armor class into divided up into evasion, not being hit, and then damage reduction. When I'm hit, damage is reduced, or if I'm wearing armor or I'm protected or something of that nature. The same thing goes with hit points. Usually, hit points gets changed into it like luck and endurance. Usually gets shifted off into physical, some kind of barometer for measuring physicality and how much damage you can take, and usually death spiraling. Right? Hey, if you're hit, you get penalties based on your movement or your speed or um, your uh, your strength or your accuracy and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe even if they're fatigue or something like that. Alignment gets replaced with motivations and such. But what does gold and encumbrance and experience points have to do with it? Well, we all know from the OSR that gold represented experience points. And so the vector of challenge shifted a little bit because it wasn't so much how many hit points you had to survive. You also had to contend with how do I get this resource out of the dungeon to allow my character to become a little bit more powerful. Yeah, Druden says personally, neither OSR nor D&D is really my cup of tea, and this is exactly I'm going to present to you the reason why neither system um, is perfect, but why those systems worked in one sense and don't work in another sense. So most people, when they hear that or have played the game where they say gold is the measurement of experience points, they think, well, that means every character that's ever been created in OSR is a greedy bastard that's just trying to kick in the door of innocent beast folk and steal their shit, right? That's not necessarily from the outside. It seems that way because we tend to like to simplify things down into its lowest common denominator, and that's not the case. Much like saying armor class is whether you hit or miss, which is not actually the case, or whether hit points are just how much physical damage you can take, which isn't the case. The reason for old school characters going after gold and removing them out of dungeons was because every single character class had a goal. They had an optimum level of success measured in the world that is a little bit more difficult to explain or takes a little bit more than a line or two to explain. So for example, fighters, your warrior classes wanted the gold because they were trying to make a keep to establish themselves to keep the villages from being attacked constantly by the goblinoid hordes. The point was for the player character to gain levels, usually between 8 and 11, and you would gain your name level. The gold wasn't just for greed, the gold was to build and a sustainable defensive position, a castle, a fort, a keep, some kind of barrier to the evils on the outside world. The games almost universally started in a tavern inside of a relatively small city or village. The rest of the world was supposed to be untamed. Not only was it untamed, it wasn't even mapped out. It was just generalized random tables, and we, those playing, would establish the kingdoms, the knighthoods. That was the point. So the goal wasn't for greed. Well, what about rogues and uh, clerics and druids? Like, why would they want gold? Well, for the religiously aligned characters, they were going to make temples to their gods. For rogues, they were going to, of course, well, they were thieving. At least it was assumed you would, and you would have uh, spy networks and such. So the gold was the gold wasn't the goal. The goal was just sorry. The gold wasn't the goal. The gold is just a mechanism to obtain something else. And often that's never addressed because there were pretty detailed rules about establishing keeps or forts or monasteries or temples, wizards' towers, and so on and so forth. And Drew's like, a temple in the name of Tiamat, of course. John Rice says says I like the idea of using gold pieces to not only as a measure of currency but also of weight. Now we're going to get into, well, what did we got gold, but experience points and then encumbrance? What was that about? Well, again, the when you are only using hit points as your mechanism of success or failure, and gold becomes uh, simply a storytelling mechanism, then the characters who have the most hit points and survive the longest with having those hit points tends to win. But when you have another vector of challenge, how can we get the gold back home? Who's trying to steal the gold? Can I carry enough gold? Why do you think the bag of holding and the floating disk spell, or tensor's floating disk, if you want to be more specific, or Hugh Hewers, Huberts or Hubert Hubbard's ever handy haversack, I think was one that was in one of the original unearthed arcanas as an extra magic item. The portable hole, like you needed to get the gold, and you had hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of gold pieces to get from A to B to construct these things so that your character could effectively retire. Beyond eighth to 11th level was you're talking about otherworldliness, even combating against the agents of gods and such. And today we don't have that separation between, say, I'm going to pick 10th level to 20th level. That you just have numbers that just keep going higher and higher, but no goal. There's no retirement level. There isn't a 20th level. It's godhood, but in between that, well, what do you do? So player characters in the OSR had to contend with not only just getting into the dungeon, but getting back out. And then when they got back out, they had to contend with, well, how do I keep the treasure safe? How do I use it to build a community? How do I build an army? How do I build a temple or a monolith? Or how do I spend this money on spies and blackmail and things of that nature? So the gold wasn't just to have the gold, it was to use it for further uh, things. Wow, that snuck up on me, really. Zamar says, if I can, oh, I'm sorry. John Rice says, it's also a bit immersion breaking to have a character either carry around too much weight or bulk to walk, much less fight. Yeah, yeah. That was the point of the magic items, although for some reason, extra dimensional spaces seem to be given away like candy for some reason. I mean, powerful artifacts should be just as rare as like a bag with an extra dimensional space in it, but that's really kind of the reason it was purchased. I mean, it was created. It's sometimes referred to as Gygaxian um objects and creatures and monsters and things, like a bag of holding in a portable hole. While interesting, were usually created not organically, but it was the purpose of it was because of adventuring. uh, uh Zamar says, if I remember correctly, in second edition, um didn't gold needed to be spent to gain the value out of it, um or was that an uncommon house rule I ran across? No, 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 no. The gold had to be spent to get the value out of it to do the thing so that the character could gain levels. Yes. So for the biggest one that I think people remember is that for wizards, you had to spend the gold to do the study to get more spells to gain levels. Right? You didn't just fight creatures and then gain levels. That's not how it worked. You fought creatures, sure. You got gold, sure. But in downtime, you then had to utilize it to gain levels. So level gaining wasn't just because you ran across something. Level gaining was you had to be proactive, not reactive. Druda says, I don't like the idea of gold directly representing experience. I would say it should have been indirect, like the experience is not won by gaining gold, but by spending it on education and training. That's exactly what it was for. That's exactly what the gold was for in the OSR. A lot of people don't state it that way, either A, because they just don't really feel like sitting around and listening to it, or B, a lot of times just because ease of use, people just stop doing it. And so eventually, as rules have iterated, those things have stopped. So when characters, that's why there was a why gold represented experience points. Let me give you an example. The old rogue, which in the past used to be the thief, that gold represented you bringing it back to the thieves guild because you were lower level, and it represented your devotion or even debt you had to a thieves guild. And the thieves guild would take that gold and kind of give you like the pat on the back. Then you had access to poisons, you had access to a spy network, you had underlings that you could spend the money on, and there were lots of things to drain your money on your way up to the top. Okay, so warriors had lots of henchmen and retainers and such. Wizards, you spent it on sages because you had to go to libraries and find other intelligent people to compare and contrast notes with, and use special inks and other accoutrements when studying magic. So it wasn't just, great, I'm fifth level, let me pick a couple of more spells. You actually had to find those spells. And so golden encumbrance. Now, let me get to these to our co-hosts here, and then we'll get into taking those things away out of the game. Whether you feel that gold and encumbrance is a good thing or not, it had unintended consequences. So today and the rest of the week, we're going to talk about some of the design elements and some of the unintended consequences. Jared pretty much says, "Good day, DBJ. What weighty topics do we juggle this evening?" Juggling had a lot to do with getting out of dungeons, as a matter of fact, crossing rope bridges and um, precariously crumbling cliff sides and crossing frozen lakes and things like that. Gold represented problems, it represented a challenge outside of losing hit points. And when you take that away, you start to funnel the challenge to a single point, and that single point has become hit points. There are no other vectors of being threatened in fifth edition today that exist from the OSR. The OSR understands that I don't need to just look out for my hit points. I've got to look out for other things. I got to look out for my torches so I can see. I've got to look out for my food and water because if I don't have that, I won't survive. I've got to look out for all this treasure that I went into the dungeon with to retrieve and pull that out. I've got to worry about retainers and hirelings and um, uh, people hired to help me get that stuff out and them stealing it. We have to worry about random encounters. A lot of random encounters were monsters and such, sure, but a lot of them were problematic encounters. Goblins wanting to steal your food, steal your gold, steal your magic items and such. Many of those random encounters were Gygaxian monsters, things, rust monsters to destroy your armor and weapons, gray oozes and green slimes that would do the same. So would destroy wizard scrolls and religious items and relics that were carried by clerics. So having more problems made the OSR more challenging. And that's why various characters had to worry about, hey, you worry about the food, I'll worry about the treasure, you worry about the paintings and artifacts, I'll worry about navigating back home and staying up and taking first and second watch so the random monsters don't attack us. Getting rid of those things, going straight to the adventure, ignoring those random things destroyed a lot of the challenges that were available, and therefore, without those challenges, some of the stories went by. So I'm ignoring some of our co-hosts here. So let's see. Um, mm, mm. John Rice says even Hermione Granger in the Potter books used an old school bag of holding. Yeah, sure did. That's right. Um, Zamar says, that sounds about right. Heck, when I run D&D nowadays, I add requirements so you are not just gaining levels for combat. As a fighter or cleric, you might have to gain followers, or as a rogue, oh, it's coming up. Okay, it'll come up soon enough. But yeah. Zamar talks about that. Like sometimes you have to. There were taxes, as a matter of fact. Your characters weren't nobles, or at least not in beginning levels. And in the OSR, you could make up your own background, but there wasn't a noble background, quote unquote. But you had to, when you went to various regions and kingdoms in your world, there were taxes for you to operate there, using dangerous magics and weaponry and things like that. Deep Quantus, hello there, says rich noble NPCs must be super dangerous, seeing as how they get full access to teachers. Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, because back, we want to talk medieval and such. We could talk about. We don't have to go hyper simulationist, but literacy was rare, and then along with literacy, then you had religious institutions who had access to the books and such. But we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Those of higher status has access to those things. So, what was the gold for? The goal was to grease the palms of the people who had books and teachers and um, educators and trainers. Sure, maybe that veteran fighter, you know, eh, harumphed their way past you because they want you want to learn their new sword fighting skills, but a little bit of gold and maybe taking care of that veteran fighter's family, you know, helped with that. So gold wasn't so much the acquisition of it. It was the lubricant that allowed other things to move and shake in the world. And while not every group, again, was simulationist in terms of that fact, gold wasn't just an end. The gold was an ends to a means. If it wasn't gold, it would be something else. It would be some other resource. And in OSR, there were other resources, right? There were magical fonts and ancient relics pulled out of old crypts, or maybe those crypts were overrun by monsters and they need to be cleared out so that the spirits in there could rest. And oh, by the way, they belong there. The seventh generation noble that wanted those items back could acquire those things back, and that's what the player characters were there for. Uh, there was also some murder hoboing going on. Don't get it twisted. Players in like dungeon crawl classics and things like that. There's a bit of the the murder hoboism, and a lot of it did default to that, but that wasn't the reason for it. Encumbrance wasn't just an annoying rule; it was a challenge to be overcome to get from A to B and then get from B back to A again. Okay. Druden says gold is too much towards a capitalist mindset. I agree with that. And so I am not sad that modern D&D dropped that. I agree. I'm just I'm I am the one, I'm the debateer setting up my argument for it. Which let me finish your. I apologize for interrupting you. Okay, says, but yes, they should have introduced a replacement to have a stake. Exactly. So My thing is remove if gold is removed, gold pieces are removed as the challenge. Like we're adventuring to get a resource to bring back to it to raise ourselves in level. Now it doesn't have to be a physical replacement. It could have been reputation. It could be honor. It could be some other element other than hit points to for us to measure our success and failure in terms of freeing a kingdom or heck, even if the players are selfish, some method of measuring how good or bad are we in the world. Now I'm going to read. I'm going to. I guess I could show it to you, but I'm going to read something out to you guys from um, Advanced Fifth Edition. This was back in 1995, so it's actually almost 30 years old. And in it, we talk about experience points, about gold being representing experience points, um, and about handing out experience points because this flows into the idea that you must murder monsters to gain experience points, and that's actually never been a thing. Um, it's a mimetic idea that spread like a virus, but actually has not really been in Dungeons and Dragons, um, not even since its inception, to be honest with you. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Um, J Dub says if a monster's treasure drew your character to the monster to kill it and take the treasure, then as soon as your character took possession of the treasure will now draw others to kill you. Oh, that is so true. Another challenging aspect of medieval Dungeons and Dragons that was often forgotten. The minute you got the treasure, you became a magnet. You're a target. There was a target painted on your back. All the retainers and henchmen that you hired, yeah, they were talking about you behind your back while you slept. When you got back into town and you start like going to the magic shop, even though even back then there really weren't magic shops, right? But the minute you start spreading cash around, even to today, you go to a casino and win the lottery and start and walk out the door, you better watch your back because there are people who are watching you. How much cash do they have in their pocket? When you go to any public place and pull out a wad of cash with rubber bands around it, that's not really the smartest thing to do. And PCs were that writ large. Um, JP says, I love the OSR ideas and textures that comes only from the interesting application of rules, except for THACO, for those who don't know, it stands for two hit armor class zero. So the O was actually a number. Abandon that over encumbering mess before it absorbs you like mathological cube. Wow, mathological. Wow. Hey, I wonder if you could design one of those as a monster stat block. Anyway, but yes, um, the rules didn't exist to be a problem. The rules were an example of the problems characters faced within the world, if that makes sense. And mind you, was there a lot of like we do we really want to deal with that right now? Yes, yeah, which is why iteratively a lot of those things disappeared. All right. Zamar says it sounds like gold was the means in physically measuring your experience of action and how it was applied. Did did you do things to learn and learn from what you did? Yeah, did you do things to learn and learn from what you did, or did you spend it to enrich yourself? And that was exactly the issue, right? Like it wasn't that. Let me give you an example. Um it wasn't the matter of a cleric being greedy who was a healer and healer of life. The goal was to bring back to spread the word and reach and capability of the greater religious sect of the PC so that they then could raise in um um, light and attention and dare I say love from the gods of goodness or something. If that's the case, right? Like, and I'm kind of framing it within world. It wasn't, hey, I've got a big thing of treasure, bam, drop the treasure in front of the temple. Hey, I get 5 levels, right? I get to go up and level. No, 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 no. It was you risked your life and limb to bring back this thing, and basically it was a problem. Gold was a problem. Gold was great, but gold was also like We have to hide it. We have to spend it. We have to find people to trust. We have to take it from B back to A. And is it going to disappear on us? Is it going to melt away because of some monster that blew fire on us? Are we going to lose it in a raging river? That kind of thing. JP says gold is great. Any currency could replace it, but as long as the player sees the number going up, they feel like they're making progress. Listen, one, and I know this happened at plenty of tables. We had, I know you've heard the story before, but long story short, we had, didn't happen by me initially, but in our group, we all were dungeon masters. And there were five goblins at the end of an adventure that decided to turn tail. They stole all the magic items, they stole all the gold, and they ran for the hills. And at the end of the adventure, after beating the big bad, we were like, "What the hell?" And the GM was like, "Well, the goblins didn't want to fight, so they stole all the stuff." And you talk about players, including me, were pissed, but it was motivation. So then from that point on, we eventually found the goblins, and the goblins dropped all the stuff and ran. Those damn five goblins showed up probably 70 to 80% of our games. They just kept following behind us and picking up, stealing copper pieces, stealing, you know, hunting after we hunted some rabbits. They stole that. They'd steal rope. They would steal tents. It was just constantly like they would just steal, 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 steal. And then they would start throwing monkey wrenches into things. They'd make noise to summon monsters. They would leave honey out to summon those old black bears that would hang out in the woods. They'd knock down beehives and all. It was constant. We loved it. We used those same five goblins over and over. And how many hit points they had? I don't know, two or three maybe. Um, were they stealing like uh, kingdoms worth of treasure? Nope. But you steal a copper piece from a PC, and oh my god, they will hunt that thief down to the ends of the world. They will. JP says, plus as a game master, it costs nothing to give out, but it is desired by all the players. A tricky balance to maintain. Well, in the OSR, there was plenty to spend your money on as well. This wasn't just hoarding gold. The point was to get the gold to spend it. You wanted to spend it on sages so you knew what capabilities the next monster group had. You wanted to spend it on loyal retainers to watch your back while your characters with, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 hit points at level 5 or 6 or something could survive, right? And you wanted to spend the money. The wizard wanted to spend the money so they could eventually get a fireball in their spell book. You needed to spend it. Yeah, Deadman says there was an optional rule in second edition AD&D where you could swap XP for gold and vice versa. I don't remember that. I remember it going one direction, but but as an optional rule, yeah, I could see that. I could see that. And here's the deal: do you spend the money to get better armor, or do you keep the money so you can gain levels? And that I think was underserved or is underserved today. There are plenty of very rich fifth edition characters with nothing to spend their money on. So gold was a resource. Now it doesn't have to. Again, gold pieces. I'm talking about as a problematic thing. You got to carry. You got to move it around. But what if you have to get deeds to land and property? What if you had to maintain or negotiate peace treaties with enemy empires? What if you had to beseech beings from other worlds to help you do? Like all of these things could be challenges if they are directly a mechanism of. I'll call it capitalism in the world. There's always been capitalism. We just use different resources to achieve it. In a egalitarian society, you're you're not using gold, you're using reputation. How 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 important are you to our society? Are you a good hunter? Are you a good protector? Are you a healer or someone who uh, uh, is expert in the arts to keep our morale up? Sure, it's not painful to do those things for other people. Hey, I'm going to sing some songs for the group, but your value is there is still value in what you do. There's always capitalism. Use we just have a physical representation with cash today and money back then. But there's other things that we use as value: reputation, importance to the society, your intelligence, your physical ability to lift, move, clean, teach. All those things have value, and it'll always be around. Zamara says, but to push the matter of gold and XP representing your character's advancement, there were plenty of ways to um take that from you, from character death to creatures who ate your memories. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Don't be one of the characters that loses a level because of fighting, what are they, wraiths and whites? Yeah, get touched and level drain and you're just like, mother freedom. Yeah, he spent a lot of time and effort to get to earn that level, and to lose it because some creature touched you. Ugh. That is something that I miss. Modern day, that is frowned upon because it feels like stealing from a player rather than attacking another resource or placing a new problem in front of them. That's one of the issues that my dissertation today is to bring up, that other than loss of hit points, what other ways do we threaten player characters by? Do they lose spell levels? Do they lose capabilities? As a matter of fact, most player characters, we're going to get into treasure, how the OSR magic treasure made your character, and today it's been moved over. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about tomorrow how magic items in yesteryear were replaced by special pseudo magical abilities currently in player character concepts, and how treasure can be, especially magic items and treasure, can be threatened. But if you gain a specific thing that only you can do internally, it's very difficult to challenge that, especially when those pseudo magical abilities circumvent the magic rules, which they do. um Z goes on to mention that there's plenty of money to be gained in D&D, but the list of items have only shrunk since second edition. Yeah, we are down only to legacy items, and part of it's because of PC power creep. It sure is. A lot of that power creep, how do I explain? A lot of the power creep has um moved from items into personal capabilities, and you can't threaten that. John Dub says, while gold is good, I've always had a greater endorphin rush from gaining rare magic items and relics, especially weapons, armor, or items that my character had proficiency for and specialized in. Exactly. Fourth edition, while I'd never played fourth edition, I've read rule books and things, and a lot of those items were designed to level with the player character. We had a house rule where we did those kind of things, right? Like my non-magical sword from my great great grandfather and passed down to my great aunt was passed down to my sister, then on to me. We always were like, oh, instead of throwing it away and getting a +3 sword, we just were like, maybe somehow your weapon got better. We just made reasons for it in world. Um, Another thing that has about the gold standard, the experience points and such. Do me the honor of allowing me to read this to you. Now, this is Zamar, you're so funny. Zamar says it makes sense that's what you are getting at, right? Says I like how it's Semitic. Need a T-shirt that says that it's Semitic. Literally, it's a mimic. Puts it, quote, there's more than just hit points and death saves on a character sheet. Everything is there to be taken. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of those Gaxian creatures, mimics, um, earwigs, earworms, or something. When you because you had the ability to listen at doors and hear sounds, and then there were like little worms that would get in your ear as you listened to it. Mimics were opening up chests, and if you thought there were gold in there, but instead the mimic would attack you. There were rust monsters were there to destroy your armor and shields and weapons. All the vast majority of the oozes were there to destroy your crap as well. Most of the oozes destroyed. Um, Gray ooze, no, yeah, gray ooze, green slime, ochre jelly, brown mold, yellow fungus. What are some of the classics? There's one more classic one. Black pudding. There it goes. Okay. Wow, I can't remember. Now there's plenty more than that, but okay, so here we have I'm going to read something out of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 1995. Okay. I'm gonna read something out to you. And this deals with sorry about the clickety click here. Spell books using experience points, scroll research, experience. There we go. Um, this is from, where did I get this from? It's almost 6,000 pages. All right, all right. Experience points awards. This is a long chapter, but this is from 1995's Dungeon Master's Guide. There are two categories of experience point awards: group and individual. Group awards are divided equally among all members of the adventuring party, regardless of each individual's contribution. The idea here is that simply being part of a group that accomplishes something teaches the player characters something useful. From a strictly game mechanics point of view, this ensures that all player characters will have the same opportunities. I don't want my face to listen. Let's here, let's share this out here. Advanced. There we go. Share. Sorry about that. My which type of we'll do this screen and do that. Where's my face? Nope. There we go. All righty. Let's increase the size of this just a little bit. Move you, center you just a little bit. All characters can all characters can earn experience for victory over their foes. There are two important things to bear in mind here. First, this award applies only to foes or enemies of the player characters. The monster or NPC must present a real threat. Characters never receive experience for the defeat of non hostile creatures, such as like rabbits, cattle, deer, friendly unicorns, or NPCs, innkeepers, beggars, and peasants. Second, no experience is earned for situations in which the PCs have an overwhelming advantage over their foes. We're going to go past this one here. The DM must decide what constitutes a significant risk to the player characters. Often, it is sufficient if the characters think they are in danger, even when they are not. Their own paranoia increases the risk and enhances the learning experience. Thus, if the party runs into a band of 5 kobolds and becomes convinced that there are 50 more around the next corner, the imagined risk becomes real for them. In such a case, an experience point reward might be appropriate. Never heard that one, have you? Here we go. The characters must be victorious over the creature. And that's where most people stop. The characters must be victorious over the creature, comma, which is not necessarily synonymous with killing it. Victory can take many forms. Slaying the enemy is obviously victory. Accepting surrender is victory. Routing the enemy is victory. Pressuring the enemy to leave a particular neck of the woods because things are getting too hot is a kind of victory. A creature needn't die for characters to score a victory. If the player characters ingeniously persuade the dragon to leave the village alone, this is as much, if not more, a victory as chopping the beast into dragon burgers. This is from 1995. It's almost 30 years ago. Almost 30 years ago. And then he talked about experience points and their values and things like that. All right, let's reduce this back down. Up and let's maximize me back up here. John Wright says gold is good. I've always had an endorphin rush. Endorphin rush from gaining rare magic items and relics. Yep. Oh, sorry. Here we go. It's from Z. It makes sense that that's what you are getting at. I like how it's Semitic and the mimic talk about that. I just want to let everybody say it's Semitic, Semimic. It's Semitic, not Semitic. It's Semitic. That could actually be just all bold letters and no one knows what it means. And at the bottom of it's like, you know, shake my hand if you understand. Um, so why else? Why else would we have something if we already have experience points? Well, the point of having me reading that out and let me see if I could tell you where I got it from. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition, a complete set. Um, oh, someone uploaded this. Dorian X, a person named Dorian X. I think got it from Reddit or something like that. Deep Quantus says, so basically, players are rewarded for making risky decisions with partial information. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, Samara says, ha ha ha, I knew it. So AD&D was far more narrative than people gave it credit for. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give out let's see if I can copy. I'm gonna put it in the chat just so it doesn't seem like I don't know if it'll put it. There it goes. That's the host of what I took. Yep. It was far more. Not only was it far more narrative, but again, the OSR. I think no. If I'm gonna do a blanket judgment because I'm old enough to be in that group, right? A lot of times we get a little bit of pushback from the OSR community, like, "Oh, you young folks fold arms, pout. You don't know what you're talking about. Get off my lawn," and that kind of thing. But essentially, it's the OSR is what I like to call BS detection, in the sense of like simple rules but complicated in their uh, portrayal. I want to get back to something Deep Quantus had to say about this because I think it's a bigger issue. But I'm getting back to your comment there, Deep. Deadman says it was second edition AD&D Skills and Powers DM's Guide. Is that the one? Yeah. Yep. Handing out experience points. It was encountering a thing and learning from that encounter. Why the word combat and encounter are synonymous with each other and experience points are synonymous with killing is because of that very first word. It's experience points for killing things and it goes on about routing them, convincing them, negotiations, tricking them, sneaking past them, blah 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 blah. John Rice says when Bilbo Baggins talked his way out of Smaug's lair and also using the One Ring, that encounter was worthy of astounding experience points to Bilbo. That's exactly right. Bilbo became better at sneaking and I'll even dare say this: Bilbo, who gained levels, got more hit points, which is why when Bilbo was not hurt, when dangerous things were happening around Bilbo, that was Bilbo's hit points being reduced a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. Bilbo didn't get tougher. It maybe started out with 12 hit points and then ended up with like 65. But every close encounter, every time an arrow came by, every time a burning tree branch fell near him, every time a rock slide, every time reduced the hit points just a little bit more. Um, so yeah. Yeah, John Rice says even though Smaug wasn't hurt. Exactly. Smaug didn't have to be hurt. Zamar says simple rules with more complicated applications. Easy to learn systems, easy to learn systems with many different implied systems that give that system depth. That wow, that's a good analysis, much better than I am. Thank you for being a co-host on the show for not making me look so dumb. Yes, that's exactly right. Now I want to get back to a comment Deep Quantus said. Quantus says, always playing it safe can ruin the fun. Yeah, that's why adventurers went into danger, even though you only had like maybe a third of the hit points you obtained to, you know, in modern gaming. That's why you went into danger, because that's why you had retainers and henchmen. That's why you had mounts and caravans. That's why you went to the sage to find out exactly what kind of dangers you were getting into. That's why you questioned people on the road and interacted with nearly everything, talking to them, questioning, poking, prodding, because there was no way you were going to survive a direct attack with a black dragon, right? But if you could find out, if you got leverage over the black dragon to get the black dragon to stop attacking the village and get out of it without having to like physically have your character threatened and gain some treasure from it and gain the experience points. Yeah. All right. So Dequantis says this is the comment I want to focus on a little bit here. Says so basically, players are rewarded for making risky decisions with partial information, and this goes hand in hand with Z's comment about simple rules with more complicated applications. Um, one day this week, probably Wednesday. I should have made it today because usually Monster Monday was Monday, but the OSR absolutely loves puzzle monsters. Um, Medusas and basilisks that would turn you to stone if you looked at them, mimics hidden in the dungeon, monsters that vampires are the most classic puzzle monster in all of geekdom. You know, vampires are strong, powerful. They drain your blood. They can hypnotize you. They can shape change into monsters. They can control swarms of animals of the darkness, rats and bats and wolves and stuff. They have all these powers, but guess what? They have a lot of little things related to them, right? They sun exposure to the sun can kill them. Exposure to holy symbols or locations hurt them. Words of cast by holy individuals like clerics or something could banish them or force them back or make their eyes and ears bleed or however you want to describe it. Not being able to cross running water, being invited inside, garlic, stake through the heart, right? And the OSR loves to create monsters that have had a lot of puzzles mixed in with them. All the oozes are like puzzles. How do you get around these things? How do you get around? How do you get past the rust monster? You take a valuable or metallic item from your pack, you throw it down, and you run for the hills. Right? It um, trolls, hydras, all these things. The OSR loves those kind of monsters. Now we've got hit point sponges. They just added an extra 150 hit points and threw the monster stat at you. There's no nuance to it, and a lot of that has a lot to do with the OSR till today. Zamara continues on to say, talking about simple rules and added depth, says that is something I am struggling with in my game system because I went with milestone leveling. Okay, there is a player habit of playing it safe. There are rewards for that. The only reward for danger is a much easier fight since you get the first attack. Yes, today we don't how initiative. Oh my god, I can't stand the way initiative is done today. It's so horrible, horrible. And yeah, John Rice says monsters with Achilles heels. Yes, there were plenty of those. There were some monsters that honestly, you the reason that you couldn't hurt werewolves except with silver weapons or magic weapons, there was a reason why you would throw them into a game where players didn't have magic weapons. It was so that they would find or earn the thing that could then defeat the werewolves. And it encouraged the PCs, we're not fighting werewolves. We're running. We are not going up against them. Right? We're going to run, we're going to hide, we're going to sneak, we're going to parlay, we're going to trick, you know. Now it's just roll initiative and you probably get the benefit of rolling initiative and being first, and what happens? Everybody goes Nova. Yeah. Yep. There's nothing wrong with milestone leveling. Here's the Juden's like, DBJ, stop making that kind of play interesting to me. I will never stop. Yeah, so my argument, yeah, DBJ isn't making it interesting. He's just revealing the interest that's always been. Thank you so much. I'm not very smart. I'm old, so I got experience. That's part of it, but it's not about being smarter or being more creative. It really isn't. I steal from everything, including you guys. I s- TV shows, movies, books, what other people have done, live plays, podcasts. You got to steal it. Steal that shit unmercilessly. Steal it. That's what you do. Yeah, John Rice says a lich is cut down to size when you're holding their phylactery in your hands. Listen, the whole point was never to attack a lich up front. It was never the intention to attack a lich up front. They were statted out to basically be the epitome of a wizard plus extra crap, right? And we all know in classic OSR that wizards started at this very low level, like the marshals. So marshals started a little bit higher than wizards and stayed that way. And wizards did this, and all of a sudden they would go and they would rise up. Everybody knew high level wizards were the most dangerous party member, especially you get past eighth, ninth, 10th level, wizards would outclass marshals completely. What was a lich? A lich was a wizard plus undead plus plus. You were never supposed to really attack liches. What you were supposed to do is find the phylactery and dodge the lich. So now going after the phylactery, pretty dangerous work, right? So you went to a sage to find out where it was. You got rumors. You hunted and pecked around till you got the phylactery, and then basically put a gun to the phylactery's head, held it over in your hand, about to smash it or destroy it or whatever, right? And you're just like, we'll cast you out if you don't do blah blah. And the lich would be like, no. You know, that's the great part of it. You weren't really supposed to go, phylactery, smactery. Let's just roll initiative and beat them up. Mm-mm-mm. Zamar says, I love using the AD&D demon generation tables. I forgot about those. You could just roll up like random powers and appearances for them. They'd have extra limbs and attacks and stuff. Oh, man. Oh man, Samara says I'm not as good either, but I can combine to make something new. I leveled up. Boom, boom, tongue in cheek. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all about. I love the comment. Is it's just revealing the interests already there. Now, let me. I'm going to devolve a little bit back to the gold encumbrance issue in the sense of the there weren't rules. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Um, the OSR had lots of things to complicate the game, but they didn't have rules for it. And what instead they had was it was a game to try to generate creativity amongst the players, not necessarily the characters. And that creativity came about because it threw at you a bunch of little elements. And for example, disarming traps wasn't a die roll. Disarming traps, I mean, yes, there were die rolls involved in it, but the disarming of the trap was I look around for a wire or a stone that looks out of place or scratch marks. I look at the dead body with the spears and javelins in its chest. Are there holes in the wall or the ceiling or something? Um, the carrying the gold out of the dungeon was okay. Do we split the gold amongst ourselves or do we put it into the caravan? Who can carry so much weight? Oh, do we leave the treasure in the dungeon, try to hide it, continue in the adventure, and come back to get it? Do we send our retainers back out the dungeon with our treasure, knowing if we can or can't trust them? Usually, if you pay them well, you could trust them, whatever, and send them back out the dungeon. Listen, some of your henchmen and retainers became player characters, and then continue on. It was a complication. How do you take a ton, a literal ton of gold across a rope bridge? Do you split it up? Do we leave it? Do we hide it? Do we send it away? Maybe getting back to town isn't simply walking across land. Maybe we have to get to a river and get a raft or something. It was complication, and that complication unto itself was an experience. And so, if we can find something today in modern day gaming to complicate things. Like I was talking about reputation and negotiations, land rights, um, uh, simply just making trekking out into the unknown to survey or map a region to come back. Maybe traveling out into the unknown to establish a new community in which spreads the reach of the community the player characters come from. Maybe it's going across a dangerous place to establish a connection with a lost people or tribe or a rescue or whatnot. It's the MacGuffin. It's the how can we find new MacGuffins to complicate the lives of our player characters? Is it uh, protecting the lives of uh, people chosen by a divine patron or something to allow them to get to do a yearly pilgrimage to make a sacrifice to the gods of your world? Or is it uncovering the lost pages of a manuscript or songs or something that will bring back to a museum or return lost paintings to a family that were stolen because their land was taken away from them? Uh, maybe the player characters are there to defend the goblinoid hosts who are blamed for something that they didn't do. And it's a lot of these aren't there aren't specified rules to do the thing, but the experience that the players get of killing monsters and gaining levels, maybe we can then make that in and of itself the adventure. My paladin's going to gain another level, and you say, no, no, they're not. You've got to do something to gain that level. Maybe you have to do some kind of atonement, or make some sort of sacrifice, or train a squire. I mean, how many player characters are given a zero level squire, and it's their job not only to beat the ass of bad guys, but to make sure their squire survives, and that they train them and give them a little piece of wisdom every night before going to bed in the camp or something. It's it's not gold that's important. It's something other than hit points that's important that I feel has been lost from the OSR, and I believe the OSR really enveloped this. And we're going to get into monsters tomorrow. We go out, our co-hosts have things to say. Zamar says, I would like to point out that I would give money the weight of 1 pound per 100 coins and dump a bunch of copper on 1/3 of that in silver, on top of 1/10 of that in gold, on top of 1/100th of platinum. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. We forget we forget the different kinds of gold standards. I loved this is something I didn't make up, but I did discover it on a forum one time talking about electrum pieces. I think electrum is I gotta look. Electrum is an alloy of is it gold and silver? Electrum, natural or artificial alloy of gold with at least 20% silver, which was used to make the first known coins in the Western world. Most natural electrum contains copper, iron, palladium, bismuth, and perhaps other metals. Electrum was used as a black market coin. And I really like that. It was from an OSR forum or something where they're talking about the different coin standards. Copper being for copper was for lower caste working class people. Silver was for merchants, merchant class, heads of families, farmers, again, merchants, sailors, things like that. Gold was for nobles. Platinum was for gold was for minor nobles. Platinum was for the heads of states. And electrum was black market. I think was how it was described. Something, and I was like, that's a cool idea. Giving copper to player characters is pretty dangerous too, because it basically weighs the same. Essentially, I mean, essentially it's the same, but it's worth less. So you could really fill the pockets of player characters who like scrambling for the copper pieces. It'd be funny. Also, you, when it comes to spending gold, although PCs would hate the fact that if they had the 10,000 gold pieces but couldn't spend it to gain experience points, but you much like walking around today in the United States with $100 bills, some places won't break them, and it's possible you could have gold coins that people wouldn't break or wouldn't may not want to break because they themselves might get robbed. So, oh, I got to remember to put I now have high speed internet. I upgraded my internet, so now I should be able to bring the Discord up into the into the fray as well, because you can't put links and artwork and things like that, but you can absolutely positively blast out the Discord. Anyways, Zamara says I would let them know it's in there, but unless the players wanted to commit a very lengthy genocide, which they wouldn't likely survive, they would have to that grab that what that they could run. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like you could say, "Oh, there's lots of treasure in there. There's a lot of treasure, but do you really think you're going to come out of there with that stuff?" Also, we're going to talk this week about the problems and not so many problems of evil goblinoids. Let's just put it that way. Evil beastmen. And are they really evil? And if they are, is it okay to kill them all and all that? Yeah, we're going to talk about that, and how do you make fully developed groups of goblinoids into things we should actually murder kill, which is pretty easy, really. I'll give you a hint. Think of them like human beings. Zamar says maybe they can come back to find that platinum later or drag squishy henchmen in to carry it out now, but that's their problem, not mine. I'm just the DM. Exactly. Create tons of problems. Don't create solutions, right? Electric is an alloy of gold and silver and was used in D&D as a magic money or DBJ beat me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I beat you to it. Sorry about that. I beat you to it about Electrum being an alloy. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, John Andrew, hey, what's going on there? So, anyway, guys, thank you so much. Let me see if I could pull up one of these really great quotes you guys have. I'm gonna go back up in the chat. Yeah, John Wright's like, I still say that J.K. Rowling got her idea of Voldemort from D&D liches. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There we go. I'll put this here before we get out. Thank you. By the way, thank you there, Z. Zamara 0292 says DBJ isn't making it interesting. He's just revealing the interest that's already there. That's exactly right. I'm really here. Before we take us out and any comments you have later on. My again, I'm a person who tends to flow positive. So the game you play, I think if you love it, play it. I'm not telling you to play in the OSR. I'm just here going like, hey, there's a reason why these things existed, and sometimes we don't have a really good conversation about the things. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tomorrow's like, so evil is just an excuse made by your average human. Jokes. I don't think that's a joke. We love to make ourselves excuses for doing evil shit, right? That's we love that kind of stuff. I bring up road rage. So Deep Quanta says there should always be a special curse on the land that prevents casual exploration. Otherwise, lords would send armies after that treasure. Ain't that right? Ain't that a thing? We have to talk about that part. A little bit of the ridiculousness. Like if magic shops existed, why wouldn't the lords and ladies of the land just purchase up all the magic for themselves? Huh? If they've got the cash and there's a person selling magic items, why would they ever let that fall into the hands of average people? And if I was a person selling magic items, why wouldn't I go to the people who have the most money first? So yeah, it's a pretty silly. There's some pretty silly things that we do, like D Quads said. Yeah, there should be some reason why. There's ways to get it. Drew and Fuzz takes us out. Thanks for the worship of Tiamat with all these comments. uh, I've got 5 heads and they're all coming out of my rear end, guys. Thank you so much for being part of the show. We always go a little bit over an hour, whatnot. Um, by the way, uh, this is just me bringing up the fact that today, because Watsy basically slapped us all in the face, and we're reeling from that, and we are trying to decide if and or when or what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Listen, the game doesn't belong to other people; it belongs to us. Play the game that you enjoy. Spend your money the way you think you see fit. If you are hands off and you don't want to give Watsy another dime of money, That's fine. If you're like, well, I'm not really into all the drama, I like what they're putting out, I can't hate on that. What I am here is to say, if you think your game has problems, let's dive a little bit deeper and fix some of those problems. Maybe fixing those problems aren't isn't as difficult as you think it might be. Maybe we might even talk about initiative like by Friday or something. Uh, Maybe so. I can give you my initiative state thing. Zamar says, by the way, best experienced as a player, my GM made goblins a race that tastes emotions in meat. Ooh, ouch. Ugh. Particularly negative ones. I was the only player in a group of progressives that wasn't didn't want to genocide them. Yeah. Didn't want to genocide them for the exact reason why they wanted to kill them. Yeah, it's the fact that yeah, flesh eaters. Oh, but goblins eating meat. Yeah, and we all know that uh, goblinoid styled monsters are from fiction, but the problem is the minute you want to make them player characters, the minute in your game world, if you make them player characters, I think it behooves you to make them real people. Now, if you just say they've always been the evil thing over on the other side of the countryside and they've always been evil, we're all the goodly people, I can't argue with that. I think it might be a little bit too reductive, but it makes sense. But if you intend on making something a player character, then I think it behooves you to make them real people with real motivations and education and all that kind of stuff. Now, does that mean you can't make a group of them particularly evil? Of course you can. Again, I point to human beings, right? Right. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. Um, we're going to continue this conversation because here's what happens. Um, this, this show, unlike some others, I wanted to make. I like to bring up a subject and stretch it off all week long because what happens is we go off air and you think your best idea and you go, oh, fuck, I had this great idea I wanted to mention. That's why we get to talk about it tomorrow. So we're going to talk about not golden experience. We're going to talk about the OSR versus D&D 5e. Basically, beginnings of role playing till today, some of the unintended consequences that happened in between. So tomorrow we're going to talk about monsters. Why OSR monsters feel so different than modern day monsters. Why the changes in them, why the stat block growth, why the hit point growth, why some of the puzzling has been removed for more um, bludgeoning, air quotes, bludgeoning type monsters. We're going to get into a lot of that as well, and why the OSR even has such deadly monsters in the first place, and how to deal with them, and how to maybe some ways to bring it into fifth edition, like some of the concepts as well. So, guys, anyway, have a great one. I will see thee tomorrow. Thank you. And by the way, um, side note, I don't bring up the algorithms much about like, share, subscribe. That's not what I mean. What I appreciate you guys doing is being active in the chat. Send your opinions out there, blast me, disagree, have conversations with each other, do the whole thing. I'm so happy you guys feel free enough to talk and participate because it actually helps the algorithm out a lot more than you think it does. So I really appreciate it. So just wanted to thank you guys for what you're doing, despite the fact that I don't do calls to action or anything like that. So guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Uh yeah. Oh shit, yeah. Holds my mouth. Can't wait for tomorrow. I may write my own dissertation. You are so welcome to do so. You're so welcome. Guys, have a great one. I got to get out of here. You take it easy. Peace.